Hola, Barcelona. Thanks for having me. My name is Sven. Today I'm going to talk about a little bit about my framework that I developed during my master thesis. This is a framework I developed for e-learning, so everything connected to gamification, engaging people, engaging your employees. And this is what I'm going to talk to today, is a framework for implementing a gamification strategy into your enterprise learning environment. This is a short roadmap what we are going to talk today. First of all, my thesis, where this data comes from, so a little bit of definition about e-learning and gamification, why these both things are fitting together, so what you should keep in mind when defining or designing for employees for the younger generation, why intrinsic motivation is always better, some requirements for a working strategy here, and of course my framework, which is called EPIC, some pros and cons, and a little summary in the end. So, as I mentioned before, I wrote a master thesis about gamification and e-learning, so how to engage your employees here. This is some kind of knowledge that I wanted to share with you. Of course, 20 minutes is not enough for that, but we can talk about that afterwards. There's no problem. Some definitions here. Of course, there are many different definitions out there for e-learning and gamification. But we can summarize that to learning with technology, so some kind of mobile learning, some kind of dynamic learning, some kind of interaction with digital media itself to give instant feedback to your employees, to your learners. When I talk about gamification, I talk about integrated gamification because I think there should be a more holistic approach to that. So I talk about integrated gamification as a user-centered design process. We heard that earlier, so it's very focused on the user that you need to design for your employees as well. Of game thinking, so you have to know what games are, what makes them so special, so fun, so engaging, so magic and beautiful. And of course, to achieve predefined goals here. So you have to define your own goals. That's very important, what we can see later on. Why these both things are going together? Because of your digital infrastructure, you can have, or you can provide instant feedback to your people. You can provide great content, what we saw earlier before in another presentation here. You can provide videos, you can provide text, sounds and graphics and whatever. Maybe some of your employees want to learn with reading text, maybe some want to learn by hearing to a podcast, or others want an infographic or whatever. You can well implement into your e-learning system as well. So it's also very great to use, or should be easy to use, to attract younger people, and it's great for measurement and data collection too. Some hints for the millennials, so the younger generation that is coming from university and will be working in your environment. They have an increasing demand for high-quality software. So imagine someone who grew up with all the iPhones, the tablets, the Facebook, the Twitter, the very well-designed user experience out there. They finally won't accept any bad-designed e-learning system. So they have a very high affinity for all these online services. Also, they are very less patiently, and they claim instant feedback, for example. Why intrinsic motivation is always better. That is what we saw before. Therefore, a very quick walkthrough here. You should provide a clear path to mastery here, a clear learning path that the graphic shows, for example. You should also provide some freedom of choice here, some relevance, of course. So your younger employees are always asking, or would always ask, is this lesson or this kind of learning, is this relevant for my work? So that's a very important part here, and you should figure out if they are motivated by maybe collaboration or maybe competition or whatever. Some short requirements for a working strategy here. Of course, because it's very user-centered, you should talk to the people. So you have to know who your users are, what they will be motivated by. It's also depending on your corporate culture. You should focus on more long-term results here. And of course, you have to ask some honest questions to yourself. So is your company innovative and flexible enough, and have you the right resources for that? So implementing a gamification strategy can be sometimes expensive or time consuming, and you should need some kind of technology here. This is my framework I developed. It's very, very short, very easy to understand. This is called EPIC because of the steps below: evaluation, planning, implementation, and controlling. It's a very iterative design process here, very user-centered, that we will walk through very quickly now. In the first phase is always about evaluation. So you have to analyze your status quo. What's it going to be? What's going on here? You have to ask many, many questions here. You have to define your goals, your company goals, and your target goals. So what are your goals? What KPIs do you want to reach? Only what you can measure, you can accept. There, you have to ask yourself, can I make it on my own, or should I buy some knowledge here? Maybe some guy who is also planning a gamification strategy here who can help me with that. What about your digital infrastructure? Can you give feedback to the people again? And of course, one honest question, do you need gamification anyway? Maybe you have a problem that can't be solved by gamification. When you ask yourself many, many questions, then you can go on to the next phase. So in the planning stage, it's all about combining your corporate goals and the user goals here. And that's about being creative, finding some ideas here. How does the learning path look like, for example? How could you provide flow in that? Do you provide the right challenges, the right quests for the right users? And of course, is this activity fun? So when you answered all these questions, you have gone into the ideation part, then it's about testing it. So you maybe will fail by that when you made some kind of prototype, maybe a PDF clickable paper-based prototype or whatever you have to test it, of course. So you have to roll it out in small groups. Maybe when your company has like 1,000 employees, you don't have to show it to 1,000 employees, of course. Maybe show it to 10 people, to 50 people, to 100 people, or whatever is going for you. And of course, you need feedback too. So ask again your people. So is this activity fun? Is the learning part too hard or too easy for them? You need this feedback to improve your whole system again, and again start again then. In the last part, again, this is very iterative, so we can move back and forth again. You have to ask yourself, did you reach your goals again that you defined as your KPIs? To again approve the system here. Did you provide the right challenges to the right people here to the right time? So for example, do you have a stable player journey? The graphic we saw before, that the player has some kind of journey in there with some obstacles and so on. When you rotate this by 45 degrees, you have some kind of flow in that. Which you saw by Mikali, for example, the flow mechanics here. And of course, did you reach your KPIs, which you measured before? So maybe your goal was to achieve some daily users, or to activate the users to go into the system, or you want to increase the number of monthly active users, or whatever your KPI was. So did you really reach that goal? So here you could also use some user observation by that. Some pros and cons. So when you did all the analyzing part, you did all the planning part, you have created some great ideas, you did some prototyping on that, and you tested your whole system again. The best thing that could happen is that you could increase the intrinsic motivation of your employees. So when you provide some kind of competence here, so every one of us has the willing to move one step beyond the last one, to grow our competence. We also want to not be forced to do something. We want free choice, free autonomy. We want some kind of relatedness. And of course, gamification and the part of e-learning is great for data measurement and data collection here. So everything that you collect can go back into the system to make it better, to make a more stable player journey, for example, with a great onboarding, with a great mastery in that. And of course, it can be interactive and it can be fun and it can provide feedback. So very fast and very instant feedback to the people, for example, for the millennials that claim that feedback. On the other hand, there can also go something wrong, of course. For example, when you don't know who your user is, because it's a very user-centered design process here. So when you don't know who your user is, when you don't know the insight, the motivation, is he motivated by a collaboration maybe, or maybe a competition, or is he into reading, or does he want to listen to podcasts, or does he want an infographic or whatever? When you don't know that, then it's very hard to design a good gamified e-learning system here. And yeah, it can be very time consuming and it's expensive, so we have to have the right resource for that, the right people, the money of course, and the time here. And yeah, when you live in countries like Germany, we have very strict laws of data security, which we saw before. You have to keep that in mind. But in the end, when you did all that, it's very much about collecting data. So it's very hard to define a good strategy here when you missed out some parts here. So it's very much about analyzing and gathering data in the first place. What we saw on the evaluation stage. So you have to ask many questions. You have to ask who your users are. What is your company about? What is your corporate culture about? What are your goals? What is the user goal and what is the company goal, and can you mix them together somehow? Also designing for intrinsic motivation is a good plus for you. And again, do you have the right resources? Do you need gamification anyway, or maybe you have some kind of a problem that can't be solved by gamification? And yeah, for the younger ones, you should provide instant feedback, so they will claim that, and they are reaching for or searching for relevant infos. And in the end, of course, this should be fun. So with that said, I thank you very much for having me. Thank you.